Hi everyone, I'm Erica Olson from On Strategy. Welcome to our whiteboard series on OKRs that work. Today we're going to talk about how to cascade OKRs through your organization. The first video we did is an overview of OKRs and the OKR methodology. If you haven't check that out first. Today, let's jump into cascading and creating OKRs that move through your organization. So as a recap, OKRs are objectives and key results. Objectives talk about the what we will accomplish, what outcome you'll deliver to an organization, and the key results are the how you will deliver that outcome. When we talk about OKRs, we're talking about the basket of the O and the handful of KRs. That's a single OKR. OKRs are cascaded or driven through the organization from a company-wide team or department or function and individual. Company-wide OKRs, super important that they are aligned to the overall vision of the organization. And we talked about that before. If you don't have aligned OKRs, you just have an OKR puddle. Just a bunch of objectives that don't necessarily align the resources, time, talent, and treasure to the overall vision you're trying to accomplish. So how do you actually do that? First of all, you need a vision, so make sure you have that. If you don't, check out that whiteboard video. From your vision, you normally have a roadmap that kind of talks about where you want to be in year 1, year 2, and year 3. Maybe not that specific, but sort of. We're looking at creating objectives, company-wide objectives, from year 1 to set your annual outcomes, your annual priorities that align with the first year of your roadmap or the second or the third year, but let's assume that you have a new roadmap. So that's how you establish your company-wide objectives. So super important. Pull them from your roadmap to clarify what the priorities are for the organization. Awesome. Once you've identified that, the next thing you need to work through is how you're going to create the cascade. And you can kind of see the cascade here just a little bit. This is one example of a cascade that would go from the CEO, so diversifying and expanding into 3 markets, cascading down to the VP, cascading down to the individual. So let's break this apart just a little bit. You need to decide with your KRs if you're going to own them or you're going to delegate them, or maybe both. In this case, the CEO's objective is to diversify into 3 new markets. There are 3 key results to achieve that outcome. 2 of them, lowering total IT costs and customizing one offering, the CEO is going to continue to own. The key result of growing revenue from the new markets from 0 to 10%, he or she's going to delegate that to the VP. And that, you can see it repeated here, that key result is cascaded to the VP, maybe of marketing, and that becomes that VP's objective. And then again, that VP's objective of growing new revenue, there are 3 key results or how he or she's going to accomplish that. And he or she's decided to keep 2 of them, maintain hiring 2 new associates, maintaining the launch of outbound sales, but delegating increasing pipeline to the team. So the increasing pipeline to 5% becomes the objective for an individual within his or her team. And then that individual has decided or determined how he or she will increase the pipeline. Does that make sense? So that's an example of how OKRs are cascaded in a very tight way. Right? So it's pretty tight. We're keeping a few of them as action I'm taking as a CEO, and I'm asking to lead my team to accomplish the revenue growth, and then that gets cascaded and so on and so forth. That said, the ownership and the responsibility for all of these key results are mine as the CEO or the VP or the individual, as the case may be. Let's talk about these a little bit more. Another idea around cascading is it can be tight. This is a pretty tight cascade. Or it could be loose. And by loose, we mean everyone would cascade off of the overall company objective. If we were doing a loose alignment, we wouldn't cascade the KRs. The KRs would be owned by the person who is delivering the outcome for the objective. So you wouldn't delegate a KR, you would own the KR. Okay, so those are kind of 2 choices to make. Are we going to do a tight alignment or a loose alignment? Neither is right. You just need to be clear about which approach you're taking. The next thing to talk about is this idea related to annual and quarterly. So we talk about the OKR cycle being a quarterly cycle where you set your deliverables or your commitments for the next 90 days. You assess your performance against them, and then you reset for the next 90 days. When we talk about annual and quarterly, oftentimes the corporate or the company-wide objectives are annual. That just makes more sense. And then going from there, we're setting quarterly key results or objectives. Normally, it's the target. Oftentimes, we're keeping this specific action and we're resetting a target on a quarterly basis. So again, the company-wide objectives should be annual for the most part, and then most of the cascaded items would be quarterly if you're managing the methodology in its classic sense. And the last thing to talk a little bit about is the fact that the KRs are really talking about deliverables, not actions. And that's just a really specific fine point with the OKR methodology. What do we mean by that? In a traditional goal cascading or goal setting exercise, the children of an objective would be actions, and they would be maybe milestones of accomplishments in an incremental fashion. In this case, the flip on it is to say, I'm not interested in the actions, I want to know what you're going to deliver. So that's just a really good way to think about when you're creating your OKRs, when you're creating the cascade, what do I need to deliver in order to ensure the outcome of the objective? What are the 3 or 4 or 5 key results, key deliverables that I need to drive in order to expand into 3 new markets? So that's just a really important way to make sure you have a really good OKR cascade. And with that, those are the nuts and bolts of how to cascade OKRs through your organization. Thanks for listening. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Happy strategizing.